Alright, so guys, believe it or not, you may not be able to see this, but this paper is gridded. This is the big white paper, okay? This is a good sign. You want to make sure, again, when you do these lines, that they are barely there. So I am going to take my big white strips that I used to help me just figure out how I wanted to crop my photo, and these are going to turn into my big blockers. So when you do this, kind of hard to see. Do this up here. So what you're going to do is use your grid to help you make this big blocker, okay? You'll need your tape, and so all I'm going to do is line it up. The hope is that, you know, these lines were drawn correctly, so then that way you can rely on your accuracy for this. So what I'm going to do is line those up. So I just picked out a square, and then I'm going to put tape right there to keep that on there. Move this. Give that back to you. Thank you. And tape it on the other side also too. So that is going to be my big blocker. It's just like basically just a squared edge. And then the next thing, this is the part that a lot of people actually kind of mess up on with the big blocker, is to mark this, okay? When you mark it, you need to mark it on the inside of this. So I'm going to start at the corner. Got to move some things. So you got to start in the corner here. So I've got the corner matched up to my 0 mark, and I am going to mark every inch. And as you can see, I'm not using a pencil, I'm actually using a pen. So the reason for this is because a lot of times the pencil will wear off of the blocker. So that's why I do this in pen, so that way it just doesn't move. And I'm just going to mark it until I run out of room, okay? And so I've kind of run out of room here. And then I'm going to turn this, and I'm going to, again, mark from the inside corner out every inch, again with my pen, and I want to be very precise. I'm going to mark it till I run out of room. Now, one little additional thing that I like to do to these is I will make every other mark kind of a little bit longer. So I'm basically taking the every 2-inch mark and just kind of making this bigger, because when I use this blocker on my big white paper, this should match up to my main grid lines. And then the smaller lines are actually the midpoint of each one of those blocks on my big paper. So again, I'm basically making the every 2-inch mark longer. Because those are the ones that should match up to my grid lines on my white paper. And then the smaller ones are the midpoints of those. So mark every 1 inch. Okay? So that's how you do the big blocker. Okay? Now the small blocker is different. Okay? Small blocker, so this is the one that's going to be used on our photograph. Okay? So we've just got I think it's a 3-inch square. And I'm going to take this square template. This will make it easier on us. I'm going to find the 1-inch block, or the 1-inch square. They're all labeled. You just got to make sure you're looking at the right side. Sometimes we look at them backwards. So it's just labeled right above there. And then I'm just going to kind of eye this in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfectly in the middle, okay, or square. And then what I'm going to do, and if you want to, you know, I would just mark this in with pencil. Take your pencil and just trace that. Okay? And then you have that, okay? Now we need to cut it, okay? When you cut this, you're going to use an X-Acto blade. And I'm going to use a metal ruler. I wouldn't use the plastic ones because the plastic ones can get scraped up with the X-Acto blade. Whenever I'm cutting a straight line with an X-Acto blade, I always use a metal ruler to act as my guide. Kind of zoom in on this so it's easier for you to see. And then what I'm going to do is just take my X-Acto blade, and you want to make sure that you're on top of a scrap piece of mat board. I have a drawer in the back that's labeled mat boards or X-Acto boards. I'm going to cut them through here right up against the edge of that ruler, and that'll be my guide. Because even though you think you might be able to cut a straight line with this X-Acto blade, you won't be able to. Always use a guide. So I'm going just all the way around. Hopefully I cut it. Yep. If you notice that your blade, when you used it, was pulling the paper and tearing it rather than cutting it, you probably have a dull blade. If that's the case, then just put those blades on my desk and I'll replace them. So now the next thing you're going to do is you need to label your small blocker. And with your small blocker, you need to label it every 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just using my ruler, just using the 6 to 7 inch mark here on my ruler. And then I'm going to go ahead and just mark the 1/2 inch mark first, and then I mark the 1/4 inch marks on each side of it. Okay? So I'll do that again. So I line that up. I am going to, hold on, I keep moving it. There we go. I am going to mark in the 1/2 inch mark first and then the 1/4 inch marks next to on either side of it. Okay? I'll do this all the way around. Again, this is another important step to do. You need to make sure that you're marking these accurately, or else it's just not going to work for you when you go to do the drawing. So mark the 1/2 inch mark first and then the 1/4 inch marks on either side. Now again, I'm using a pen because the pencil marks tend to wear off over time. If you want to, you could do it in pencil first and then go back in and mark it in pen. And then I go through and I make the 1/2 inch mark a little bit longer. Because again, these are the marks that should be matching up to the grid lines on my actual photo. The smaller marks represent the midpoints, okay? So these will, hopefully, these longer marks will be the ones that will match up to, again, the grid lines on my paper for my photograph, and the smaller marks will represent the midpoints, okay? So on this, you're going to, again, mark every 1/4 inch, okay? And then the next step for you is to basically start drawing.